to come on in and to join us. So we'll give them a couple more minutes to hop on in so they can find out more about our fireside chat today. So we'll get started shortly.
Okay.
All right. Welcome everyone. This is our Founders First Capital Partners Fireside Chat Leadership Series. And today we are speaking with Kim Folsom, and our topic is changing the way diverse founders finance their growth. My name is Shaylin Scott. I'm the Executive Director of Founders First CDC. I'm also the founder of Book Mecca and former director of On the Road Lending. I'll be your host today, and our guest will be none other than Kim Folsom. First and foremost, we want to thank our Founders First Capital Partners, our host partners, National University, program partners, SBDC California, Founder First Capital Partners, as well as our supporting bank partners, US Bank, Pacific Western Bank, Union Bank, and Wells Fargo. So thank you all for your support. We have a little brief bio about our presenter, myself, the moderator and host, as well as our guest for today. It is Kim Folsom. She's the co-founder and CEO founder of Founders First Capital Partners, the largest revenue-based investor for diverse founder-led small businesses, as well as the founder of Founders First CDC, which is pre-funded growth education and coaching for pre-funded business. She's a 25 plus year serial tech entrepreneur, and that's just the short bio of Ms. Folsom. A little bit more about her. She is also the founder of the Founders First Capital Partner, the largest private provider of growth funding for service-based businesses, and the only Black and woman-led revenue-based venture platform with $100 million in committed capital. Founders First Capital Partners focuses on partnering with employer-based contract revenue generating small businesses from $250K to $5 million, and providing them with flexible and non-dilutive funding, expertise, resources, achieving exponential growth in underserved communities. So Ms. Folsom is a social entrepreneur. She's dedicated her career to leveraging the power of market forces and sound business practices to address disparities in revenue and job growth. This is just, as I mentioned, a brief bio of her. She has a plethora of expertise and experience. And prior to Founders First, she raised more than $30 million in institutional venture financing, creating over 500 premium wage jobs. And she's founded and served as key executive for 6 successful ventures. She's earned her MBA degree from the University of Pepperdine and a bachelor's degree in information systems, a minor in economics from San Diego State University. So we definitely want to welcome Ms. Folsom for all of her hard work, and we look forward to learning more. So before we get going, let's take a brief poll and see who all is here in the room. We would love to see who's in attendance, and we look forward to connecting with you more even afterwards. So we'll take a little brief break here. Poll should be popping up and you'll fill that out right now. I'll give you about a few seconds. Fill it on out. Don't be afraid, guys. We're not asking for your socials, just, just a little bit about you. Okay, and my team will let me know when we're almost wrapped up there.
Okay, done.
All right. Well, thank you all for participating in that brief poll, and we'll get started in our conversation. Before we begin diving down deep into Kim's history and her background and all the great initiatives that she's doing right now, let's give you a little background information about the current state of funding for diverse founder-led businesses. I'm sure you've all heard of the show Shark Tank. I'm pretty sure everybody has. And there's this perception about how businesses are funded. So according to the Kauffman Foundation, about 80% of capital used by founders and entrepreneurs is actually personal savings, including 401k, credit cards. Less than 17% is SBA supported debt funding, and less than half of 1% is provided by equity financing. So that definitely changes the idea that all of these businesses are getting this great amount of funding from organizations like Shark Tank or different type of investors. People are providing the funding themselves. So that definitely changes the narrative there. Another background information you want to share with you here is about the funding, how it is critical components to success for the business owners. And without it, it's difficult to even achieve the scale and build wealth. And how to make an impact with businesses when you don't have that financing, it's a little harder to do. So move to the next slide, please. The Kauffman Foundation here also mentioned that diverse founders face an uphill battle in securing the right type of funding to grow their businesses. And in fact, about 87% of diverse founders state that a lack of access to funding is the primary cause of a lack of growth in revenues in businesses. And so this is a good backdrop to our conversation today. And our audience wants to know a lot more about how they can receive funding. What does that look like? All of the questions going through your mind as business owners. Am I ready? All of those things is what we'll be discussing today, and the background of Kim Folsom as well too. So it goes along with the mission of Founders First Capital Partners, which is to advance the movement to solve social and racial economic equity gaps for the entrepreneurial business world, to enable diverse founder-led businesses to create premium wage jobs, increase profits, and wealth for underserved communities and stakeholders. Now, that is a phenomenal mission if I've ever heard one. So I want to start right here with diving in with you, Ms. Folsom, and thank you for joining. So before we get going, first question in my mind, from all the background that you've had, all of your experience, and now where you are, can you share with the audience your journey on becoming a leader in funding and building your own revenue-based funding advisory platform? Some of those highlights that led to your growth and $100 million in committed capital.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Shaylon, for moderating this session. And I'm so excited to be here with you. And I'm truly honored. I mean, it's a kind of a pinch me moment. I wish that I could say, oh, there was just this, direct foresight of this occurring, but it was really, as one of the people that have been in our programs, uses this statement of wanting to be recognizing that you have to lead the change that you want to see. When I started, some 30 years ago with my first company, I didn't see a way for somebody who looked like me to run a company that wasn't a side hustle, and it wasn't a lifestyle business. I wanted to, bring it just like the guys that I was in, college with, as well as, started my career with. But there wasn't a way, and so and so it was just constantly, if I, it's almost like a comedy, thinking of all the things that I thought of how to go about doing this. And, the first inclination came because with my very first company, I think I raised something like 5 million in the crazy .com era in the 90s. Some of my investors had said, Kim, with your background, you should consider being on the other side of the table. And it was like, are you kidding me? It took me 8 years to launch my first company. I don't know anything about doing, investing in businesses, but I learned, especially as being a founder who constantly raised money from people that said, you can't do it and you won't do it. And, all of those things, and realized, hey, I can do this. I have done this. And I want to be able to advocate for other founders, be it women, people of color, military veterans, just a variety of different folks that I just don't see as much opportunity. So that's the one, driver behind it, is that somebody said you should consider doing this. And the fortunate thing is my investors didn't stop. They didn't just say one time, oh, you should consider doing this. They went through and said, you should consider doing this. And it was like a regular thing of every time I saw them, you can do this, you can consider doing this. And so that was one. And then the other is recognizing all of, as I say, my entrepreneurial journey of founding 7 companies, that I had, the 6 before, I had 3 dramas and 3 comedies. And it was like wanting to go through and make certain that if I can have some people not have the same drama that I experience, and it's hard, it is so hard trying to do something different than what people are used to seeing, but everybody else is doing it, so why not? I've been used to, of being the only check the box person for so many things. And so if I can do that and put up with the craziness to do it, then I'm going to bring a whole bunch of other people along the way, because there are lots and lots of really great companies that are led by, diverse founders that, and it's more, I was talking to one of my mentors today, it's more than the capital, although capital, it's like one of those things, what does Tina Turner say, love don't pay the rent. Money's important. You gotta have the capital to make this happen, but also you gotta have the know-how, and you gotta have the connections. And I think about when I did my first company, all the stuff I didn't know and all the connections I didn't have, where after doing this this amount of time. And I would say the last thing is, I, be it the way I was raised or whatever, was used to doing things the guys did. And I wanted to be in the C-suite just like many of the guys that I went to school with. But I knew that I couldn't do it if I was going to be picked, like, playing a sports game. So the only way I could be assured that I was going to be in the C-suite and build the business that I wanted to build was I had to build it myself.
Create your own lane.
Exactly. And, as the saying goes, step out on faith and, make up all these different stories in your head to help you get going. But, I wish it was a much more sizzly story, but that's how it happened.
That's a beautiful beginning. And I love how you said, how you, even now, you still speak with your mentors, which is huge. So speaking on some of the ways that you had that resiliency and grit, what were the strategies that you used to pursue and advance this investment thesis that you had?
So I looked at, it goes going back to keeping up with the guys I went to school with and seeing the ones that did the best. And the ones that did the best didn't do it based on raising a whole bunch of equity. They raised a teeny about equity and had much more flexible capital. But that capital was generally not available to diverse folks. But I was fortunate because again, I was a a software engineer starting my business. And so, as all of us started our businesses, I still hung out with the guys that were doing what they wanted to do. And we would, compare stories of how we were doing what we were doing. And, looking at guys are good at comparing, being competitive and comparing scores. So they'll tell you, hey, this is what I got out of this, and I looked at, because I can remember them saying, oh gosh, this is great that, you raised, equity capital and all this other stuff. But, I had guys that were, retiring at 30 because they did something different. And it was just like, if I can educate people about there's all these other things that I learned along the way to do this. So revenue-based financing is a flexible, capital source. And it's different. Most people are used to traditional debt, or they're used to, equity financing where you give away the store. And, from a, systematic inequity for diverse founders, oh my gosh, it's just, crazy. Because if you don't recognize that just incrementally, so many things add up all over time. Like, the fact that one person has their college paid for where the other person takes on debt. And if you're making $68 to $1 versus 100% of the dollar, those things, add up. And so, the things that you can do early on, that those insights so fortunately, I also learned to just ask for what I want. And so I asked people that were doing well with, other models to say, would you mentor me? Because this is what I want to do. And I want to do it for my people. Because, the other side of it, this whole, interesting diversity inclusion, episode that we're going through right now, I'm older than dirt and have seen this movie before, and wanted to make certain that there was more than, 2-3 people that got under the tent before. So, I look at it as, yes, I am just as much of a badass as the guys that I went to school with.
There you go.
So I'm, so that's the fuel that's, going through and making that happen. And I've been fortunate enough, and I also want to share all of my, these guys that have been mentors, advisors, advocates, investors to me, they're the majority, folks. They're the white guys I went to school with, or, their dads that went to school with, their uncles or whatever. So, it was building those relationships and learning from them and constantly asking why and how come and how'd you do that?
Yeah.
It does not stop.
In.
Exactly. Not stop.
Now that is definitely being a visionary and thinking not only of yourself in the present, but of others behind you as well. And in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion, there have been a lot of announcements from major corporations on how they want to provide and offer assistance and make things more equitable. What advice would you give some of these large organizations on how to follow the lead and move beyond the rhetoric and the marketing and philanthropic efforts? What are some examples, or how should they be moving?
So, as one of my investors said to me, all money's green. And if you can have them see that doing good, they'll do well than they would otherwise. And it takes time to do that. It takes, if you talk to people on my team, you'll hear me constantly say it takes 4 times as long and 3 times, costs 3 times as much. But, it's really having to share with them that, there's so many, all of these things that you want to do, you can do so much better by using your allyship to partner with diverse founder businesses, because then you're going to get to those things much faster than you would otherwise. And some of the stuff that they used as far as excuses about, as far as execution risk, lack of access to capital, and all that other stuff, we can call, their bluff on that, because, they're, if you're willing to do the work and make the sacrifice, you can get there. And that was been the playbook I used, is that, when I was starting, this was the pre-Oprah Winfrey National show, I couldn't find somebody who could be my role, the Kim Folsom to me, but I did know that people like money and they like profits and they like revenue. And if I can show that I can do that along with everybody else, then they'll take my call. But also, they're not going to do it the first time I ask. I may have to ask 20 times to get it, but I'd rather have the control over where I want to go and the influence with regards to the thousands of people that I can influence. So it makes it easier to, take my lunch for, the last 5.5 years. To get to this point, everyone thinks, oh gosh, it must be glamorous and all this other stuff. It's like, it
Oh,
will be.
goodness.
It will be.
Well, that's great. The strength and devotion to your mission and cause, and it's definitely a testament to what you've already accomplished. You've made some significant impacts in this space, and there's several areas that we want to kind of organize our session around. There are about 3 key takeaways we want all of our attendees to get today. So if you could pull up those takeaways, team in the back there, and pop up those questions we have, and we'll kind of dig into some of these for you. The first one is, how is Founders First mission to grow and fund diverse founder-led businesses? How is this unique from traditional banks, CDFIs, which are community development financial institutions, or merchant cash, advanced debit, or angel equity investment? What makes it different?
So I would say that, the thing that's so different between, when I started my first company, I started at the same time that, the 2 guys that started Google, as well as Jeff Bezos started, Amazon. And, while I was high-fiving and butt bumping because I raised 20 million with my first company, Jeff Bezos raised 200 million. And so did Sergey and Larry raise, 200 million. So, it's different. And to get to the point of even being able to get access to somebody else's money, I didn't have the friends and family, like as many diverse founders are. If you're doing well in your family, you are the bank of, put your name in there. I was the bank of Kim Folsom to my family. And so when I said that I was giving up my good job to start my own business, my family thought I was crazy.
Crazy.
But the reality is that that's the understanding that difference between, diverse founders' journey, because they're generally starting it with their, as you mentioned before from the Kaufman stats, they're starting it with their personal saving 401k to get to a certain point. And then, once they get to that next level, then they can get access to capital. I was fortunate with my first company in that I had real estate assets that I could pledge to get access to my first other people's money. Most diverse founders don't have, a significant amount of, personal assets to pledge to get assets. And so, our funding model takes into consideration, because we represent the companies that we fund, of what their journey looks like. We know that that they have that challenge with regards to getting access to capital. Now, we do hold them to the same expectations that we went through, that you're gonna bootstrap and use grants and pitch event monies to get to a certain point of revenue creation and profitability. But once you get to a certain point and that you got a model with the unit economics makes sense, we're going to be the first institutional money that's going to back you. And it's not just going to be, oh yeah, we wrote you a check and now you're going to figure it out on your own. Because as I shared with you, it's more than money. It's relationships, it's know-how, and it's being willing to learn from other people. And so we use our social capital, we use our financial capital, and all of those things to help people get to that next level. And we set an expectation for you that you can do it if you're willing to do the work, and that you don't have to have pristine personal financial credit, nor do you have to have a whole bunch of real estate assets to make all that work. So that's one thing. Like if you look at in the Bay Area, the great VCs are the ones that have been in your shoes before, and they've got the operating experience, and they use that experience to help you get to where you're going to go. And they feel your pain because you got their money, and you're working together. That's what we do for our diverse founders, is we want to not just provide them with capital, but provide them with know-how and connections so they can get to where they want to be.
Now, I don't know if you guys heard, but it sounds like Founders First is a cheerleader for diverse founders, not just in connecting with contractors or business contacts and networking, but providing a resource for funding and education all in one. So that's beautiful. So how have you also leveraged your entrepreneurial experience to kind of help diverse founders overcome some of the challenges when it comes to growth and accessing capital when it comes to scaling? So how have you kind of used your own experience for that?
Yeah, I mean, so there's some kind of magic things that, the guys that run the businesses, the most of the tech businesses do that any business can apply. One of the things that we focus on are service-based businesses, and our goal is to help those service-based businesses become tech-enabled service-based businesses. So that's one. Because when you take your business and go from just purely a people-driven business, or as one of my mentors and board members says, has a business that has too much operating leverage, it's riskier than if you use some technology and contracts and those types of things to show some sustainability of that business. And all of the businesses, because I ran a tech-based company, it's introducing them. I mean, people have choices. They could go through and say, I'm going to continue to do the same things, but expect different results. But so that's one, leveraging the know-how and resources to help them add those tech-enabled elements so that they can be better at what they're doing. So then the other one is the actual economic model using recurring revenues and introducing them to the fact that, one, you need to have much more predictability, and the contractual piece is important because, if somebody has thought enough about what you do that they're gonna, enter into a contract, even if they can give you a week's notice or a month's notice, it's better than there's nothing, that there's no, pre-existing agreement. So that's one. And then the other is multiple revenue streams. I mean, all these companies that are doing well, they have one client and they have additional ways to add value. So, these are just, some highlights, but it's based on, again, the hitting my head on the wall and figuring out what worked and so forth, and having those predictability of revenue streams that were contractual, that increase the ability for somebody to take a leap on me, which was a square peg in a round hole. But, I came correct with all the documentation and the same model, so that it gave my investors the comfort of knowing that when they're going to get their money back, just as you hear Mr. Wonderful talk about, I need to understand how am I going to get my money back?
Yeah.
And those are things that we, I, as well as other key members of our member support group, educate and help our members with overcoming that. And believe it or not, anybody can do this. Anybody can go through and do it. It doesn't have to be that it's just available to tech companies. Service-based businesses can do this. Manufacturing-based businesses can do that. Distribution systems could do that. B2B or B2C. It's just going through and be willing to ask questions of your clients, have them tell you what's working and what's not working about what you do. And sometimes they're going to tell you your baby's ugly, and you got to be willing to, suck it up and say, okay, what is the top things that are priority? One other little anecdote that we share with people is having them understand the priority of where your business needs to be in order to have your business be more sustainable. You need to be ideally a cure for cancer, worst case, a vaccine, as we all know now, the power of the vaccine. But the challenge is most businesses are aspirin, so it's, competing just on price, and, just going through and thinking, well, if I lower my price, then, that's how I'm going to get business. That's not sustainable. And it doesn't matter what size business you are. I mean, you look at businesses like Dell, some 20 plus years ago, they tried that business model of having the cheapest computer that you could order online, and that didn't last that long. So, it's that experience that we begin to, communicate and share and help and have a structured environment to help them with on the pre-side as well as on the post side.
I like how you took all of your experiences, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you created this social enterprise that is changing the trajectory of these businesses today. Uh, like how you mentioned too, your baby may be ugly. Maybe put a bow on your baby. You didn't know at first. Shift some things, do his hair or something. I don't know. But
Right.
that's great. I love it. Uh, Also, another area we want to make sure our viewers take away too is there's some new funding options that Founders First may be able to offer. So could you tell us a little bit about what those
Yeah.
are and how they're supporting the businesses too?
Right. So, we understand that with all of this recovery money, diverse founders have gotten the least of it. And so, with those organizations seeing, post pandemic access to funding, we've got, uh, new funding programs targeted to companies as little as 500,000 in annual revenues, to help them grow. And, they're matched with, post-funding advisory support. And depending on how far along where you are, that support varies. We've been, I'll just say, blessed, in the last couple years. We closed our $100 million facility, and then we just closed our Series A. So we've
Congratulations.
added some new tools in the toolbox, such that we're partnering with various accelerators and also, angel folks as well. And but the thing that's, the deal with us is we're not the type of organization where we are, gonna make an investment and assume that you're gonna, have some exit or something in, call it 5, 7, 10 years. Ours is based on companies that are revenue generating, break even minimally, but they need to be profitable. And it's
Mhm.
feasible to do. In the last week or so, we just had our pitch day event for our boot camp program. And many of these companies, without, getting any initial funding, made some of these things that I'm talking to you about, adjusting and adding recurring revenue, adjusting their customer offering,
Yeah.
talking to, and have seen a tremendous, tremendous impact to their business growth, which is fantastic because, you do need, funding to fuel your growth. There are some people who decide, I'm going to use retained earnings to do that. But at any case, you do need some funding to be able to help you grow. And the other thing is, diverse founders, which is so great, when they decide to grow and add people, they're adding other diverse people too. So, it's a
Keep it
win-win.
going.
It's a
Yeah.
win-win for the founder. It's a win-win for their community. And so those dollars can stay in the community, and they're an inspiration, to other folks as well.
Well, speaking of inspiration, you mentioned businesses that have gone through the cohorts and those that are making those changes and shifts, and you see the improvements. So let's talk about a specific deal that's in your portfolio here. Um, One is Onshore Technology Group.
Yeah, super excited to talk about, um, onshore because, oh my gosh, I've met so many great folks like Valerie King Bailey, who's the founder and CEO of Onshore Technology Group, is based in Chicago. She started her business as a IT services business, which, while she got her certification from Microsoft, it's really competing on price, but she found that there is a more need as far as a specific type of proprietary system for specific industries. And so she began, I want to say some few years ago, reconfiguring her business so that she had a much more unique offering, going back to the whole vaccine versus, cure for cancer piece. She found that, life science companies have a compliance need. And if she could build a platform that would help them meet that compliance, then she can do that as a unique offering. Now the opportunity and challenge is to make that transition of going from much more generic IT services to something specific in the industry and specifically solving a big pain point required capital. She needed to hire some developers. She needed to hire some, implementers and those things. And, even though she was running a company that, got to 7 figures, it was hard for her to get, more than low, 100,000 access to capital. And so through her network, she was introduced to us, and she joined our program in May of last year. We launched a new program called Fast Path, which was targeted to companies over $1 million in revenues, and heard about what she wanted to do. I've talked to you guys about some of the criterias of being a revenue generating profitable business. We're able to make an investment in her firm, as a result of learning about her growth plan, and as a result of that, she was able to expand her team, expand her marketing, increase her revenues by 150%, and now she's on pace to being recognized by Inc. 5000 as part of their fastest growing companies. So not only did it help her vision and her company, the people that she hired, helped, the community that she served. But, I, often share, the story of Valerie because, she's a really great example of, a great service-based business that needs somebody to believe that, she can make things happen. And we were able to support her in that effort. And then she's an inspiration to other business owners.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And you as the CEO are just, her story so well. That's what makes it beautiful. You can tell that you're just as invested in it as she is. So that's great.
Yeah, well, so all of our programs, I do get a chance to connect with everyone in the program, even as we now have some, hundreds of people go through our program a year, but we structured it such a way such that I do get a chance to connect with all the business owners, which is great. Because the other factor is when people say you can't do something, or, hey, Kim, you're a unicorn, you did this, you got lucky. I've got to be able to go through and say, oh, no. There are thousands of Kim Folsoms out there that with the right support, they can make it happen. And so, if they are able to get to a certain point, which is, similar to what I did, I had to get to, a certain point before I could get access to outside capital. And we're willing to work with them earlier on to make the changes to do that. But, it's in order for us to meet our mission of there being more growth of diverse founders, we've got to be able to show the people that are doing the work and making things happen that, it's not just a small handful of people. There's lots of people. And we look at it as, companies like hers are like we would consider, mainstream companies. They're not trying to be the next Facebook, but she's gonna be able to make a great impact in her community and create some great wealth for herself too.
That's great. Now, I know there are a lot who are viewing and those who will be viewing later. What advice would you give to founders who are in the audience who may be seeking investment?
So I would say that, first understand what your value is. What value are you delivering to provide a way for the investor to get the money back? I mean, that's kind of the, personal baby ugly argument. How are you going through and providing that value to them? And if you're not certain, then, it's often a great way to get involved with a program. In my journey, I went through 12 accelerators because there was a lot I needed to learn. Now the hope is you don't have to go through 12. Maybe through some things you can shortcut it, but it's continuously improving. I was reading the Amazon shareholder letter that was written by Jeff Bezos because I was able to save up enough pennies so that I can own some of his stock. But he talked about when he started, selling books, he had no idea of, creating AWS and Alexa and all this other stuff. But he really put his customers first. and continue to ask, what do they want? What do they need? What is their biggest, thing? And continue to ask that question every single week. Who are my customers? What do they want? What do they need? And how could I do something that's unique and differentiated? And that opportunity is available to every entrepreneur. And you'd be amazed at what can happen when you look at it that way.
That constant growth and desire to educate and learn that's what I took away. That is definitely key for sure. So I hope all of you are taking notes. If not, grab a little pen real quick if you haven't already. Another question I did want to hop in before we give any of our viewers time to ask any questions. If you were to meet your 21-year-old self, Kim, what advice would you give her about your future?
I would say it's going to be okay. Just hang in there. It's going to be okay. I'm old, as my dad uses the term, and I was fortunate enough to just get a chance to see I'm old enough to remember when there wasn't a lot of representation. And sometimes that can be a scary component. But, if you can go through and hang in there, write down your goals of where you want to be. And sometimes you have to, like one of my mentors and board members said, Kim, you've got this movie playing in your head. And it's like, yeah, I do have this movie playing in my head, because that helps me get over when people just do the most ignorant things that I could possibly imagine. But that's the thing that does it. But you can do it, and it's sometimes fear, because it's not done, and people who appreciate you and love you say you can't do something and all that other stuff. So that can bring you down. But you can. It just may take longer than you want. And if you can go through and just take some time on a regular basis, it may be once a week, to say, this is what I want to do and this is what I did, and I'm thankful for what I learned, and just taking that time to be thankful and constantly not shortcutting your dream, you'll get there.
Great. So you mentioned mentors quite a few times today. So how are you using your mentors and advisors to kind of support not only your business objectives, but your personal as well?
So I use a lot of them, and maybe it's because of, and I encourage other people, there's stuff that you want to do. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Ask people, hey, who's the best at doing this or that? Or who would you recommend doing this or that? Or the other thing people like is, if you could have did this differently, what would you do different? People always love answering that story. So that was, and that was something I have learned to rely on a lot. And actually, one of my board members says that I have mastered the hub and spoke of getting to where you want to be, and putting people into buckets. If you want to go through and set these big goals for yourself, like for me, when I started Founders First, it was like, well, after my former investor said, for the 30th time, Kim, you should create a platform to fund diverse founders. And it was just like, well, I haven't done anything of that scale before, but it was just like, well, if you had a magic wand, what would you do? And so it was like, I'm going to create something massive, because, it's the mantra of either go big or go home. Yeah. And then ask people, so who's doing something like this in other places? And find a way to ask, either way. And there can be both direct mentors of people that but there can also be indirect people that you've never met before, and follow their journey. I mean, the cool thing about social media and all this other stuff is you can find out just about anything on anybody. and because and that's a good and bad, but if you go through and set those. And I would also say, don't be afraid to think big. I find too often entrepreneurs play small. They feel that there's some comfort in saying, if I only set this goal and it's this low, I won't make a mistake or that type of thing. You're going to learn along the way, And so, being able to have those goals are important, and not lose sight of them, because you either are going to get to where you want to be, or you're going to have a learning experience, not a failure, but a learning
Yeah.
experience. And then the other thing that I learned from graduate school is you can always not do anything. That's an option. You could just choose not to do something, and that's okay. That's a hard lesson for the mature, grown ass, entrepreneur, of saying, no, I can't do that. Not never, but I can't do that now. I've got to
Wrong
focus
time.
on these things, because this is what I got to do before I can get there. But keep that, it could be a 3-year, goal of what you want to be. But, being able to go through and say, not no, but not now.
I like that.
And it's hard. I have to get slapped around the head sometime by my board members to say, you know what, Kim, you're doing too much. You gotta, let it go, and, move
Yeah.
on, and it's hard, because I want to do so much, but
Do it all. Do it all.
yeah,
I can definitely understand that. It's small businesses. You may be a small business, but think big. You hear
think
that, guys?
think
Think
big.
big.
Yep. Because it takes the same amount of stuff to close a $10,000 contract that it does to close a $100,000 contract. So you might have to start with a 10, but go through and figure out, what do I need to do to build the trust and the value so I can build that $100,000 contract. And then the 100,000 is 250,000. And, it may be, standing in the mirror, say 250,000.
Hey,
So that you
speak
can,
it.
exactly, so that you can not trip up when people say, so how much does it cost? 250,000.
Say it with your chest.
Exactly. There you go.
Well, we have a few questions from our viewers. We have a little bit of time left. One question says, what advice would you give your future self?
Oh my gosh. It's so interesting, looking at the future one, because of where, I have to get to the goals that I've set. I have had to plan out 10 years. And I've never had to go out that far, but I had to do it in this business. So, when I started the whole idea, it was 10 years. And I had to go through and say, what will we be doing in 10 years? What will this business look like in 10 years? And I have to catch myself, because it goes back to what my mentor says of, you're living in the 10 years from now, thing. And, but I got that down of, we're going to be doing this. And because of that, it's going to have this amount of impact. And not, again, it goes back to not being afraid, even though you don't see representation of doing things that you want to do. And you're going to learn a lot, and it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay that it took you 3 times to go through and do something, or it takes you, that's the other one. That it's going to be okay if it took you there, that journey, because, people they can take so many things away from you, but they can't take your experience, and I would say that I am not, I'm very much a hardworking person. And so I'm about doing the work, but I've got to I will be proud, because I plant seeds and let new people on our new leadership team make some significant contributions. And it was because I had to learn to get my stuff together so that I can transfer the knowledge to them, so they can, take it on. Like, in this particular set with your joining us, I'm super excited having you on our team, and being able to get your great compliments that and talents to help us get to the next level. And that's the thing, is that, the advice is that you learn to let go. And but what did they say? Do it in such a way that you're not having people dangling, but
Yeah,
that type of thing.
that's a good idea. I have another good question that came through the chat here about your mentors. Finding competent ones that will stick around. How do you find these long-term mentors instead of just the ones that are pop in and out or only situational?
So, interestingly enough, I do have some situational people. I have people into buckets where, it started situational and then you build up enough rapport and respect with them such that it's much more than that. And it takes time, it takes, I think of the people that are now more than just situational. It took 3, 4, 5 years to get to
Wow.
those things. And I also found some of these people not in the way that you typically would. Some of it was volunteering for something else. And at the time, side conversations where, hey, at a dinner saying, hey, I'm doing XYZ, or you said such and such, how did you do that? Or what are some of the other things that you're going through and doing? And so it starts, it's like any relationships. It starts with with having it be, situational, and then building up that, mutual trust and respect so that it's something more. And then there's people that you outgrow too. And that's
Easily.
hard.
Yeah.
It's super hard because, especially when there's not a whole lot of representation, you sometimes have people that aren't able to support you to where you want to go, and you keep those people on too long. But you have to be able to, at the end of the day, you've got to be the decider of, hey, this is what I am going to do, or this is what I'm not going to do. And some people may get mad at you, and it's got to be, okay, that just
Yeah.
setting those expectations there.
And speaking of making a shift and a change and going in the direction that you're wanting to go, you had talked about the revenue-based financing, and there's a lot of questions about what kind of businesses is it best for, or how do they qualify, or how can someone qualify? Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Sure. So, as I mentioned earlier, you need to be, revenue-based financing or royalty-based financing, you need to be generating revenue. That's one. And secondly, you need to be generating revenue at a certain level, so you're not, an idea, for us, our criteria is we're generating revenue, companies generating revenue at $500,000 and up. And then they also need to be, having a certain level of gross margin such that it allows for, paying the royalty to back to the investor. Those are the 3 key components. And so, just as a, quick, thought, if your business is over $500,000 and there's some predictability of that revenue, ideally, some contractual related things, or there's some, commitments associated with that. I would strongly invite folks to, you can go to the Founders First Capital site and register. And, one of the people on our team, if you, go to the apply button and and you can, honestly answer that, you're over $500,000 and you've got, the gross margin expectation is there. Ideally it's like 40%, although depending on the type of business, it can be some exceptions, but we want 40%. And that you have financials that you're able to share, check it out. It may not be something that you're gonna be ready for immediately, but it's keep that in mind, because the good news about this is it's less dilutive. The challenge that I've seen with our diverse founders is that's the first time they've run a business before. And so they give up so much equity, be it in the seed round or angel round, that they need additional capital. It's not one of those one time, this whole perception of you just get one infusion of capital and that's all you need to get to a 7 and 8 figure business. That's not the case. You generally need additional capital to help you continue and fuel your growth. Sometimes that capital can be, retained earnings, but most businesses don't have that level of cash flow to make that happen. But that's an option without giving up so much control. And it doesn't mean that because you use revenue-based financing, that's the only thing you can do. You can have other sources of capital in addition to revenue-based financing capital, so it can be complementary to other methods.
I like how you mentioned that the layering aspect of it. The business is going through the accelerators. are not only educated on what works best for them, but on all the different levels of funding that is available to them. So that's
Yeah. I mean,
education.
you look at, when many people think about, oh my gosh, I want to build, a business and it's going to be, so many people think either it's going to exit or it's going to be, but most businesses used multiple forms of capital. Like if you look at, the big publicly traded businesses, oh my gosh, they generally had anywhere from 30 different infusions of capital to get to where they're going to be. And also let me make clear, we're not focused on businesses that are, trying to be the next Facebook and go public. We're looking at businesses that, as we call them, Clydesdale and zebra businesses that are going to grow anywhere from 3 to 10x with the right type of support and flexible capital.
Hey, well, I have another question before we have our time is ticking down. What advice would you give a person or business owner who's not quite as comfortable in diverse settings?
I would say, you can start with a one-on-one, going through and, getting, starting where you're comfort, programs that help you meet where you are. So it may be starting with a coach to have you get familiar with, what you are, where you are, and what you need to be. And then once you get to that level, figure out what needs to happen for you to get to be comfortable with that. I mean, again, it's part of the, the movie that's playing in Kim Folsom's head, asking the question, what does the reality need to be for me to be comfortable with this particular situation? What does it mean? That reality may be, once I get these 3 things done, then I'm going to feel good about doing this particular thing. And where I am right now is not going to be so bad. Because the cool thing about, life or business, it's constantly changing. Whatever you're happening today is not going to be the same exact thing that's going to happen, next week. It'll be a new set of stuff,
Yeah.
and you can go through and prioritize what are the things that you need to do. But, just going through and saying, what do I need to do? And then the other thing is an opportunity of using an example of what, if there's somebody you admire that is comfortable, that is using that setting, what did they do? To and find out what they did that you like and what that you did that you didn't like.
Okay. I have to ask, what is the title of the movie that's playing in your head? I just have to ask that.
Kim Folsom, Badass World Domination.
Hey, there we go. I love it.
But yeah, so, it's like when we get to in 10 years, it will be, it'll be an equitable situation. Like, I wrote an article once, and it's on Medium. It should be that when you think of diverse businesses, be it, all of the different, we celebrate inclusivity at Founders First, but, being able to have them have the opportunity to be as expected that they're going to grow a 7 and 8 figure business, that they can exit, that will have 2 things happen. One, when you go to whatever town you're in, not just in the Bay Area or New York, and say, name XYZ, whatever the diverse, that, somebody who launched and grew a $10 million business. It's not the same person every single place you go, that there is somebody. So, that, knowing that it's possible, and it's possible early on. And then the other is that, that it's just as possible as Starbucks, Wi-Fi in Starbucks. It's like when you go into a Starbucks, that they got Wi-Fi. And so it should be, I will have gotten to where, the mission that we're going after is that, be you woman, military veteran, person of color, LGBTQ, or in a second or third tier city, you can build a 7 or 8 figure business that will provide wealth for you in generations, and it's not an exit and not an exception. That's the story playing in my head.
I love it. And that is a way to end a webinar. a fireside chat for sure. We see progress and growth for all of you. And I want to thank you, Kim, so much for joining us and sharing all of your knowledge and wisdom. I'm sure you are like, everyone else on here is motivated and ready to take on the world as well too. So we definitely want to invite all of our attendees today to register for our next webinar coming up. And that will be on Thursday, the 22nd at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And it is on succeeding in the business of healthcare post-pandemic times. We'll be speaking with Arturo Taylor, President and CEO of TGT Scientific, and Dr. Muriel McClurkin, President and CEO of Southland Care Coordination Partners. So I hope you all join, and please feel free to learn more about our programs and services and how you can be involved with Founders First. So go to our website at foundersfirstcdc.org and feel free to contact us and stay in touch. So thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll see you later on this week.